Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mellissa Thomas with Florida National News. As promised, I am here with you guys for the FNN Politics and Power series. Today, we'll be having a one-on-one interview with State Senator Randolph Bracy. We appreciate him for taking the time to come on. And for those of you who are not quite familiar with who he is, here's a brief rundown, just a little bit for you. He's a Florida native, so congrats on that. And of course, a UCF Knight, hashtag Go Knights. He has an MBA as well as a Master's of Science in Sports Management from the University of Central Florida. Got his undergrad from the College of William and Mary with a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. So he knows how to dig in your head. His favorite recreations, of course, basketball and music, so big basketball fan. And he is the son of two very influential parents. He's the son of Dr. Randolph Bracy Jr., who's also the pastor emeritus of the New Covenant Baptist Church of Orlando in Orlando, Florida. And of course, his mom, LaVon Bracy as well, who is currently the director of programming for the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. So without further ado, welcome, State Senator Bracy. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. So of course, just starting off, how are you and how have you and your family been holding up during the COVID-19 pandemic?
We've been fine. We've been spending a lot of time together because we haven't been going out much. So it's kind of worked out in the sense that more time for family, but we're doing well. Everyone's healthy and safe, and so we're carrying on, and I appreciate it. Appreciate you asking.
Awesome. No problem. Especially as someone who, is a public servant, like someone who has to look out for his constituents. Have you been hearing from your constituents during the pandemic? Have you been keeping in touch with them?
Absolutely. This time has probably been one of the busiest times ever as a senator because the COVID-19 pandemic has had such an impact on the economy. It's affected so many people, and so our office has been very busy. We've been working remotely. We're now back in the office, limited hours, but we're back in the office. And so we've been handling constituent calls and emails throughout the pandemic, and mostly regarding the unemployment crisis. Many people know the unemployment website does not work well, and many claims have been languishing in the system. And so we've been doing all we can to expedite those claims. And so I've traveled to Tallahassee, spoke with the DO secretary to push him to move a little bit faster, and really just take, at the very least, provide a direct line of communication for my constituents so that we can expedite at least the services for the people in Central Florida.
Makes sense, and thank you for that update. And how has that process been so far in the process of kind of holding them accountable and kind of pushing them to expedite?
It's been better. There's been a lot more people that have been paid. So I must say that the process has been moving better, but there's so many problems with our unemployment system that it just needs to be overhauled. We have one of the lowest payouts for unemployment, and we have one of the shortest amount of time that people can be unemployed. And then there's all these work search requirements and all these encumbrances that we essentially don't have a safety net system in the state of Florida for all intents and purposes. I mean, even with the unemployment system, only about 10% actually get unemployment in a normal in normal times. So I think we need a better system in place. A crisis like this can happen, and we need to be better prepared for it. And that's something that I will continue to speak out to the governor, to my colleagues in the Senate and the House, that we have to fix this so that we won't have the situation that we had if this ever happens again.
Valid point. So talk to us a little bit about, you recently had a a food drive in the Central Florida area. Talk to us about how gratifying that was for you and how often you do these. Are there more coming up in the future? Just kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have one Friday at Eccleston Elementary at 10 a.m. We've just ramped up our efforts to provide these food distribution events just because of the need. As I've been saying, because of COVID, a lot of people are unemployed, and we just really wanted to provide a service for people that need a little bit extra help. So we've been doing this about every 2 to 3 weeks. Normally, we do it twice a year. So we've really tried to be a resource for people during these times. And so again, we have one Friday at 10 a.m. at Eccleston Elementary. Please come by, and everything is free. And then we have another one coming up in Zellwood, but I'm not sure the date. I believe it's the 20th. And so we'll have more information as it gets closer. They can follow me at Randolph Bracy on all platforms, Instagram, Facebook, to get information on those kinds of events. We're constantly doing it. And
just for our audience knowledge, who do you normally partner with for these events in terms of nonprofit organizations, schools, churches? Who do you normally partner with?
So what I normally do is try to pick different locations so that we're meeting the needs of people throughout Central Florida, mostly my district though. So we've done them in Apopka, we've done them in Pine Hills. The last one we had was in Ocoee. This is obviously in Eccleston. So we move it around, but our main partner is FarmShare. And FarmShare has been such a valuable resource in providing these food distribution events. They're really the food providers. And so we work with them as state leaders, and we help support them, but they also survive through private donations. I believe that's correct. I believe they receive state money, but anyway, that's who the main partner is. And then Feed the Need is an organization which is run by John Rivers. He's the owner and originator of Four Rivers. So he provides some hot meals, and then we just partner with different churches or other organizations for location support and volunteers. And then we just have common volunteers that hear about it and want to be a part of it.
Awesome. Now, guys, we're about to get into the more, the nitty-gritty details of Senator Bracy's day-to-day work and responsibilities as a senator. But before we do, we're going to take a quick commercial break, guys. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
I'm not picking it up. You pick it up.
I'm not picking it up.
Well, somebody's got to pick it up.
I'll pick it up. They're clean. 'Cause my hand is clean. Oh yeah, I'm Charmin clean. That's how I know they're clean.
Charmin Ultra Strong is woven like a washcloth and just cleans better.
Yeah, I'm Charmin clean.
The kid does have a point.
My hand is clean. Yeah.
Enjoy the go with Charmin. And for an extra clean finish, try Charmin Flushable Wipes.
All right, guys, welcome back. We are here with State Senator Randolph Bracy. Thank you so much again for taking the time. So now jumping into, your work and your life as a senator, first, let me start with what you studied. Originally you capped off with the sports management degree and the MBA from UCF, but how did you journey from that to becoming an elected official?
Well, when I graduated from college, my mother happened to be running for a position on the school board. Many people don't remember that campaign, but years ago, she ran for a school board seat. She made me her campaign manager. And it was through that process that I enjoyed I learned a lot, and I enjoyed the campaign side of politics. And so that's when I started to think about working in the field of politics and government. But yeah, that was my first foray into it.
Wow. And you originally ran for state representative. You were elected state representative. what do you see as the difference between the duties as a state rep versus what you're seeing now as, you know, the duties that you fulfill as a state senator?
Well, we're both chambers are in the legislature. The Senate, obviously, the Senate works a lot more. It's a because there's less senators. There, the numbers are a lot closer when I speak of Republican compared to a Democrat. So they work a lot closer than the House. The House has a supermajority held by the Republicans, and it just works different. It's very partisan. The Democrats aren't really included in a lot of the heavy decision-making processes. So it's just a lot different. And so I've enjoyed my time in the Senate. And really, I've tried to leverage the position to do events like we do back home. You know, you don't always get to pass the legislation that you would like to, just because, you know, for example, I was the chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee, where I was in charge of all policy in the Senate, in the criminal justice arena. But although we passed a lot of reforms in the Senate, the House wouldn't even hear those bills because, again, they're supermajority held by the Republicans, and it's a lot more partisan. They weren't reform-minded with some of these issues, and so we didn't get consensus on those issues. So I've tried to use the leverage of the position. Even though I've been able to pass some meaningful legislation, I've also tried to do a lot back home. One of the things I worked on this year was funding for our HBCUs, in particular Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman reached out to me last year about some financial struggles that they were experiencing. And so I immediately got to work, and we were able to get them a little over $17 million in recurring funds. Wow. For them to sustain themselves. And so I'm very proud of that work. And so these are the type of things that, you know, in the Senate, there's a little bit more, there's more opportunities to work with the leadership to do big things like that.
Awesome. And actually, you touched on one of the questions I wanted to ask you about. You made history in 2016 when you were the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee. Talk about what that milestone was like. Were you treated differently? Was that something that was significant to you, particularly, you know, you just been elected to the Senate there, and, you know, were folks wondering how you were able to get that to become chair?
Yeah, there was a lot of people surprised in Tallahassee. It never happens. You know, Republicans have controlled the legislature for the last 30 years now. And for a Democrat, a freshman, to be named chairman of a very substantive committee. The Criminal Justice Committee hears more bills than any committee in the Senate. So for me to be given that position, even though I was in the minority party, was a tremendous honor. And it was difficult in some instances, but it was exciting. It was new, it was fresh. And so what I did, I worked hard to pass a lot of reforms that haven't even been heard in the Florida legislature, haven't even had a hearing, but we were able to push some of those policies forward in the Senate, and just having the debate on these issues, I think moved the ball forward, and eventually seeing these reforms pass. So, I mean, some of them have, some of them haven't, but I believe that, you know, that's part of the process of getting them out in the open, discussing them, getting legislators used to debating these issues, having people come up and testify how they will have an impact, and that's how we were able to move some things forward. So it was a tremendous honor. I'm still involved in that in that criminal justice committee. I'm still on it. I'm not the chairman anymore, but I still work hard to see some of these reforms see the light. And as you can see from the George Floyd murder, these issues are still so very important to our community, to our nation, and so that's something that I always care about and work on.
And to that point, you jumped way ahead with the George Floyd thing. That was actually like my question for last. But
We can go back.
but no, I do want to touch on that point though, because the two things you talked about are actually very closely related. So one of the questions I had was, what do you normally, working in the state legislature, there are a lot of bills that you propose that tend to die in committee. So I wanted to, but you kind of answered it saying that sometimes the most important thing is to put the idea out in the first place so that it's discussed among the lawmakers. Maybe it's something that they've never had to have a discourse on before. So is that, in some cases, is that a little more of a meaningful result to you, even if the bill doesn't necessarily pass? Is it more meaningful sometimes to simply have the idea put out there and discussed?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I get frustrated, to be honest, when these things don't move, because the statistics back up these reforms. You see how it affects everyday people, and sometimes just politics gets in the way of good policy. I was on a radio show yesterday where I was talking about body cameras and a bill that was proposed a couple years ago, and law enforcement came to Tallahassee to speak against a statewide mandate on body cameras. So I guess those conversations were important, but to this day we still don't have a statewide mandate. So I think it's important to talk about, but eventually we have to pass them, and that's just what I'm here for. I'm not really here for moral victories. If I think it will help police officers and our community be safer, then I think we should do it. And so I'll keep pushing, but Tallahassee is a political place. I mean, politics rules the day a lot of times. But what's good to see is when you see these protests like that and people start to get engaged, then the legislators pay attention to that. And so that's really what moves the ball forward, is when you see social engagement like that. If not, then the political leaders aren't really motivated to make serious change. They stick with the status quo. So, I feel like I'm an activist by heart. And so I appreciate the protest, and I push these reforms. That's really why I came to Tallahassee. But everyone there doesn't have the same mindset. A lot of business interests control what happens in Tallahassee, not necessarily the people's wishes and priorities. And so it's uprisings like this that force the issue.
Interesting. So to that end, though, do you think do you see the right? What are your thoughts on the rioting side of things? Because obviously, protesting, you just mentioned, these guys are predominantly business minded. So obviously, with protests happening, some of the businesses are closing down just out of safety, and that affects the bottom line, of course. But what are your thoughts on the rioting side of things, like where businesses are being damaged, or vehicles, that sort of thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I fully condemn, denounce any rioting. I'm saying I support protesting, but as far as stealing from businesses and vandalizing people's businesses, I totally denounce those actions, and I would ask people not to do that, because it really muffles the message that I think we're trying to express during these times. So I don't
Oh, Senator Bracy, are you there? Oh, there we go. All right. Can you hear me? All right, so guys, in the meantime, while we reset, in the meantime, while we reset, guys, I'm going to take a quick commercial break and come right back with State Senator Bracy. Hold tight. Stay tuned.
Mercury agents everywhere are saving people hundreds and are also there to help save the day.
That was fast.
You covered.
Thanks, agents.
Watch out!
That's my car!
Don't worry, we're here to help.
For savings and service above the rest, you can count on Mercury. We're on a mission to save you money.
Can you hear me?
All right. Yep, all right. You are back. Thank you guys for continuing to stick with us. So yeah, go ahead and finish your thought. I know you're in the middle of something very important. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that the rioting muffles the true purpose of what I believe the protests are trying to symbolize. And so I would just ask that people not do that. If they really care about change happening. And I also would really like to see the energy that I'm seeing in the protest movement, that it carries toward voting. I think that's where I think the change happens. You know, when we elect the right people in these positions, then they're in a position to reprimand a police officer when they are using excessive force. We put the right politicians in place to have real criminal justice reform. So let's not waste the movement, but let's use it to make some serious change, and that's the message I'm trying to preach.
Got you. And outside of voting, because of course, elections have their set dates, but what do you feel people can do in the immediate future that is equally constructive to kind of help move things forward in terms of the political process or even on a community level?
I'm seeing a lot of conversation just on social media, which is just generating even more conversation. Like the more you talk about it and you influence the people that it affects others, and the message is getting out there. I mean, we have to talk about these things. And so I've had more Caucasian people in the last couple of days reach out to me and just offer some support and encouragement, and just to say, we think this is wrong, and if we've never said anything, it's let me say it now. I mean, there's kind of an awakening happening, and so I think these conversations are very important. And obviously voting is important. I think the protests are important. I mean, I really do. It calls attention to an issue that needs attention. And so again, peaceful protests, organized protests, but I do think protesting has its place. And so I would like to. I mean, I'd like for the pressure to continue to be there. Calls to your elected officials on the change you would like to see. The more people are engaged, the more elected leaders pay attention, because we work for the people. A lot of times when people aren't engaged, elected leaders lose their focus, and the business interests come in, and they have a certain influence on politicians, but the people is really what should affect us. And so I think when they make their voices heard, we pay attention.
Wow. That was a bar alert for everybody that wasn't listening just now. I just want to make sure to reiterate this point to make sure that everyone heard that. But you were saying when the constituents don't communicate as often as probably we as voters should, the elected officials that are responsible to serve the constituency lose focus. It was that phrasing that really caught my attention. So thank you for sharing that. Viewers, I hope you're listening to that. Harass your elected officials.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah. So definitely appreciate you sharing that with us. And to that point, something similar. You previously proposed a bill for the Ocoee Election Day Riots Descendants Fund, and obviously that one died as well. But talk a little bit about that process, and are you still continuing to pursue that? Because much as you said earlier, even with some of the bills that do die, like you continue to push with some of them. So is this one of them that you're also still working on?
So no, that bill didn't die. We passed that bill. What did happen is I had a $25 million reparations piece that was a part of that bill. That part was stricken out. But there were some other pieces to that bill. An education piece where it had to be taught in our schools in the state of Florida. There were some memorialization portions of that bill where, you know, there are naming opportunities for schools, especially in Orange County, state parks, that the state is directed to find different locations to name these state entities after victims of the Ocoee riots. So that piece did pass, and we're waiting on the governor's signature right now. But you know, the reparations piece was something that sparked a lot of conversation. It's a national conversation. But I really wanted to use the Ocoee massacre to bring up a broader point about reparations. I believe in it, and I think you know, this country, as we deal with this social and racial unrest, I think that reparations is really looking at our past. We have to just deal with our past. I think reparations is a way to confront our past and really start to provide some healing as we move forward. And so I loved that bill, and I loved researching about July Perry and Ocoee during that time. What's interesting is that, you know, July Perry was a wealthy man, and he was attacked because of his wealth and his organizing. So what usually is talked about is what happened on election day, him organizing Black people to vote, and it was a massacre ensued. But what was also interesting is the land and the land theft that was really the impetus for this massacre. And so it was a voter suppression thing, but it was also a land theft, and that's why I think it's even more. The argument is more solidified to ask for reparations because of all the wealth that was taken during that massacre.
That makes sense. Here's a bit of a question to kind of feed off of that a little bit. Do you believe that, like, say for instance, even on a national scale, that reparations were to happen, is there a concern in the back of your mind that perhaps the conversation would end there? Like, all right, you guys got your money, now we just gonna do what we're gonna do. Like, is that ever a possibility in the back of your mind, like a concern? And if so, like, what would we have to do in that case?
So, like, if let's say you pay reparations, then you know, everything is equal. You know, I think there are going to be people that will say that, but I think that that's fine. I just think that we have to start moving the conversation forward. I think that we really won't see true reconciliation, racial reconciliation, until I think we go there and deal with it. And so there's still going to be those that say, hey, we did this. There shouldn't be any other things like reparations, but you got to have the conversation. You got to, I guess, deal with one thing at a time. And once we can get to that point, then I think, we'll deal with the conversations after that. But I think reparations warrants conversation in our state legislatures and in Congress. Well
said. And I wanted to just to kind of, as a point of reference, because you mentioned reconciliation. Trevor Noah talks about this a lot because, of course, he's from South Africa, and they, as a nation, had to do it. They were required to do it, of course, under Nelson Mandela. Do you believe a national conversation like that is possible in our current state, like with or without the reparations part? Do you think it's possible for the United States as a nation to have that kind of conversation and face it head on?
Well, I think events like this are causing us as a nation to just reckon with race and our history regarding race. And so that's going to be dealing with reparations, police brutality, all kinds of issues, our criminal justice system, the inequities in it. I think we're being forced to reckon with it. And so whether people are ready to have the conversation or not, it's happening right now. And it's going to make its way to the Florida legislature and to Congress. I mean, there was a bill for reparations in Congress that got a hearing for the first time in, I don't know, forever, like last year, 2 years ago. So, I mean, you're not going to be able to avoid it, especially with what's happening in our country and the inequities that are happening all over the United States. It's going to rise up, and we're going to be forced to deal with it. And I think you're seeing that happen right now.
Gotcha. Now, bring the conversation back down a little more into the state. Kind of talk about what pre-COVID-19, during COVID-19, and even now in light of the George Floyd thing, what has been the most common pain points that you've heard from your constituents, and what have you been working on to address them?
I would just say the economy. I mean, people still need opportunities in their communities. And so what I've tried to do is we have job fairs, we have resources to help people get more education, to prepare themselves for the workforce. I just think that's the main thing that affects people. If you can put money in people's pockets and help to make a good living for themselves and their families, then things will generally be okay. That just in a broad sense. So I think that's what I keep in the back of my mind, and education, on a state level goes into that piece. I mean, making sure we have a good K through 12 system, a good university system. All of these things play a part. But at the end of the day, people want to make a good living and raise their families and such. So, but, we provide all kinds of services for our community. I mean, we have, we as legislators really have authority over all state agencies. So we get calls from constituents that may be having a problem, for an example, with unemployment or a child support issue or whatever, any type of contact with the state agency that a constituent may have, we deal with all of them, and we're happy to respond and help them through that. And that's what we do. So I've enjoyed serving the people of District 11.
How do you typically prioritize those calls when they come, when those needs arise? How do you normally address each issue?
Well, we have a great staff. I have Alex, who is new to our staff.
And he's out again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stand by. There we go. Calls might be coming in, Senator. All right, guys. We're going to take one more commercial break as he comes back, okay? But continue to stay tuned. This is a great conversation. We'll be back.
At Duke Energy, we deliver electricity and so much more, like free home energy assessments, rebates for energy-saving improvements, payment options to help you better manage your budget, and even bill credits for helping the community use less energy. So no matter what you're doing, we can help you make better energy choices every day. It's just another way we bring power to your life. How much can you save?
All right, guys, continue to stay tuned. Senator Bracy will be back on in a moment, all right? Thank you for your patience. We'll be back.
One of the things I love about Bass Pro is they have 3 great ways to shop. You can head into one of their awesome stores, visit BassPro.com, or get great gear from that catalog Johnny Morris sends out. Hi, here's your package. Bass Pro Shops, where commitment, passion, and the great outdoors all come together. Why would you shop anywhere else?
All right. It looks like we are back. Thanks for sticking it out, Senator.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. So yeah, you were previously talking about your staff helping you address the needs of your constituents. So kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so you said prioritize. How do we do that? We have a great staff that works very hard. And, Charlene's been with us the longest.
Oh, hold on a second. We lost the audio. Can you hear me? Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Yeah. So Charlene's been doing a great job. She has a lot of experience working with our constituent base. They know her, and we just pride ourselves in taking those calls seriously. So they do a great job. They work hard. I can just say that they put in a lot of hours. They work after hours, and so that's how we're able to take care of all of the constituent issues.
And for you personally, what has been the most gratifying part of being state senator? What's been the most meaningful part for you?
I would just say helping people. It's a tremendous honor. I don't take for granted the opportunity to serve. And so it comes with stresses and the like, but I'm thankful that I'm able to do something that I love and enjoy, even for a certain amount of time. We have term limits, but I think I always look back on this period and just say I did the best I could to help people. And when I see people, they say they appreciate it. It just happened a couple of days ago. Someone said, "Hey, I'm watching you. I see what you're doing. Thank you." And that right there is enough. Even if they didn't say that, I felt like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I enjoy it.
Awesome. Real quick before I proceed to my next question, to that point, we do have some comments here for the folks that have been watching live on Facebook. So they did give you shout outs. So I just want to share some of those with you. This is one that was like totally kind of uncensored, but it was earlier in your conversation though. She was kind of echoing her support of you while you were talking about the way things were when you first came in. Some folks were telling you hi, so your guys were telling you hi. Absolutely. Cora actually, she was talking about, this is when you were discussing the COVID-19 and how you've been handling things, doing the food drive. So, Cora said, now you're here, you're wonderful people trying to fix what Scott did. So God bless you. A couple more hellos to you. Absolutely. Thanks for commenting, Shane. We appreciate you. And our mutual friend Pernell Bush out in Seminole, he made a note of something you had mentioned earlier. So, he quoted you. You'd like to see the energy being carried towards voting, which was well said. That was another bar. So we appreciate you dropping that for sure. One other supporter, Matthew, he mentioned that, he supports you 100%. So, thanks for the shout out, Matthew. Thank you so much for commenting. We appreciate you guys.
Good friend.
Awesome. And then lastly, Marquise, this is directly to what you're mentioning, the person that told you thank you the other day. Marquise McKenzie says, thank you for all you stand for. So Marquise, thank you for the comment. We appreciate it.
He's an activist too. He's out there pushing the message forward. So appreciate what you do too, Marquise.
Awesome. Now jumping over to, a couple of more personal questions for you, just as a human being, not only as a senator, but as a father, a family man. What normally keeps you motivated on a day-to-day basis, particularly on the tough ones, when there's, a bill that you're very passionate about, that you're seeing some opposition probably from the Senate to the House, and
Right.
What keeps you going consistently?
That's a good question. Honestly, the people, like right now we're not able to knock on doors, but when I was able to, and I get frustrated with the process in Tallahassee, just talking to everyday people and what their thoughts of how government should work and what's important to them, it like reinvigorates me and renews my energy. And it reminds me of why I decided to run in the first place. It was about people, it wasn't about the large business interests that have influence in Tallahassee. And so sometimes you get, you get caught up in the just that political bubble in Tallahassee. You're trying to work with these people and try to figure out a way to get legislation through, and then you come home and it's like, yeah, I remember why I ran in the first place. So that's what energizes me in regards to this position, just everyday people and hearing what's important to them and reminding myself why I'm fighting the good fight. Right.
And talk a little bit about the impact that your parents had in your life, and even now as as a state senator, your father being pastor emeritus now, but having that long legacy of service, and your mom as well, like just seeing their long legacy of service and their involvement in the community. How has that influenced you?
They're still a sounding board to this day. They've had tremendous impact on me. My dad, as a pastor, when I was young, we lived in Philadelphia, and the mayor of Philadelphia, the first Black mayor of Philadelphia, was a member of his church, was actually the chairman of his deacon board. And so we were very close to his family. And so politics and government has always been intertwined in our family. It was a discussion at the dinner table. And even though I played sports as a youngster, the influence of how to help people through our government was always present. And so they've just had an impact on me. And then just who they are as people. I mean, they care about people. Their ministry was really just to serve people. And so I feel like I'm serving people in a different capacity, but I've inherited their heart to serve. And so they've taught me everything I know. And then, I throw my sister in there. I'm actually trying to get her to run too, because she's such a talented young lady. And I believe there may be a future in public service also for her. So I'm just gonna say it's a family thing.
And I was just gonna say that too. Make it a family affair, a power family. And lastly, as we wrap up, I do want to thank you so much for your time. But is there anything that you want to share that perhaps we haven't talked about? Anything that you want the audience to know?
No, I've enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to continue to do all that I can. I would just say again, follow me at Randolph Bracy. on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I appreciate again the protests that's happening now, the movement, the energy. But I feel like we need to direct it toward something more purposeful. The protests are important, but let's really show out in November and let our voices be heard, because that's where I think the real power lies. And so I hear people get discouraged and say, they're out protesting, but they'll say like, man, nothing's going to change if I vote. But nothing's going to change if you don't vote. And I think, that attitude is not going to get us to where we need to be. I mean, we had a governor's race in 2018 that was, within 35,000 votes. We had that in the city of Orlando. So anyway, I believe that when people come together towards a movement and use their voice, a change can happen. And so I would just encourage people to keep moving, keep pushing, and let's carry that energy into these elections. So, but thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. It was an honor having you. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing so much of yourself. We appreciate you. Definitely we encourage you to continue to do the hard work. And now that you've given us that encouragement, we will harass all of y'all.
Come on. I like it.
Absolutely. So thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your State Senator Randolph Bracy. And again, be sure to follow him on social media on all the platforms. He is at Randolph Bracy. Make sure to put it up there so y'all spell it right. And then a quick programming note for us here at Florida National News. Continue to stay tuned, guys. For us here, as you heard me say earlier, the FNN Politics and Power show is twice a week, so Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m., although we will have a special episode this coming Thursday. It won't be at 1 p.m., it'll be at 2 p.m., but we will be interviewing journalist and advocate, Ms. Tracy Powell. So be sure to stay tuned here for our conversation there. She was recently an honoree for the Unsung Hero, the MMCA, so congrats to Ms. Tracy Powell. And of course, you guys, as promised, you will see me again this afternoon for the Evening News Rundown at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you guys, as always, so much for tuning in. We appreciate you, and I will see you at 5 p.m. Have a great rest of your afternoon.